Hello, and welcome to the Synergy Sessions, where we're all about reciprocal collaboration. My name is Wayne Reid. I'm a professional officer and social worker at BASWA, the British Association of Social Workers. This is episode 3 of the Synergy Sessions, and the focus is on Black leadership. We've got special guest appearances from Laurelle Brown, who is co-founder and director at KIJIJI. We also have Beverley Tarka, who is the Director of Adult Health and Communities at Haringey Council, and also outgoing President at the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, ADASS. Laurelle and Beverley discuss their definitions and experiences of Black leadership, which is fascinating in terms of their presentations and their experiences. And then we also have an invigorating group discussion with members of the Black and Ethnic Minority Professional Symposium, or BPS, which is chaired by myself. So relax and enjoy the synergy in this session. I'm really delighted to have with me Laurelle Brown from KIJIJI. Laurelle is going to talk to us about Black leadership and what that means to her and her organisation. Laurelle, I'm really happy to have you join me.
Hello, Wayne. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I just want to kind of make it clear for everyone that we've known each other quite a long time. I think we met back in something like 2018, and we met for the first time in person post-COVID at an event in 2023 at Cumberland Lodge, hosted by Carleen Firmin and Ben Lindsay. So it was really nice to meet you and your colleague Ade in person.
Yeah, it was great. Obviously, follow you and have been in contact with you for a number of years, but it was lovely to actually get a hug up close and personal.
It was really nice. And it was nice to chat with you at that event and discuss ideas, including this about Black leadership. And here we are. So I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say. I'm going to hand over to you now.
Awesome, thanks so much. I am Laurelle Brown. I'm co-founder and director of KIJIJI. I will go into detail about what KIJIJI is later on in the presentation, so I will hold fire on that now. In terms of my daytime job, I'm a consultant, so I'm director of Laurelle Brown Training and Consultancy, and our work entails working with organisations that safeguard and promote the welfare of children to embed or affect what we call EDI change, so equity, diversity and inclusion change across systems for children. So it's things like audits and strategies, learning and development, reviews, trying to really change these systems to help improve outcomes of racialised children in particular, when they are in need of help and support. I also do a few other things connected to social work and social workers. So I'm an independent scrutineer for a Safeguarding Children partnership, which is a statutory role to ensure essentially that the partnership is delivering the best possible outcomes for children and families in that area. I'm also trustee for the Association of Safeguarding Partners, and I'm a Churchill Fellow, and my research was looking at foster care for adolescents with complex needs, and I sit on the working group for children in care for the Churchill Fellowship as well. So my career over the past 20 or so years has been in different services for children, including within children's social care, and actually doing an improvement journey in children's social care, but always with social workers, given the nature of the sector. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning to talk about leadership. And Ade, my co-founder, is also on the screen, similarly works alongside social workers as an inspection lead at HMIC FRS. So he inspects police forces across England and Wales. So what does Black leadership mean to me? And this really made me think a lot, because typically I don't actually consider myself to be a Black leader. I'm just Laurelle. I just do the things that I'm passionate about that make me happy. I try to right the wrongs that I see in my life and across the systems that I'm within. So I had to do a bit of thinking about me as a leader, but also what does Black leadership mean to me, rather than a lot of the literature and the research that I use in my work all the time. So I thought I'd start off just by talking about leadership in general, because there's an extensive body of evidence that outlines lots of different leadership models over time. We've seen this develop. We also see lots of criticism of some of the earlier writing about leadership. But for me, these elements still stand the test of time. For me, leadership is about performance first and foremost. It's the performance that you're able to draw out of those around you, but also that you deliver and you role model in all that you do. It's about influence. As a leader, it's an ability to affect some sort of change, some sort of action, whether it's through how you inspire others, whether it's through how you're directing or transforming. But there's something there about being able to influence change to happen around you. I've also included grind, because for me, leadership is about that grind. One of my favourite books is Rise and Grind by Damon John, that's it. And I just had to look at my bookshelf, couldn't remember. And it's for me, it's all about really role modelling what you're trying to achieve and you putting in the work to do that yourself. Not giving a asterisk is also quite important for me in terms of leadership. That ability to focus on whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, your goal, your vision, and ignore the noise. There's a lot of noise with leadership, especially for Black leaders. And so you have to master the art of not giving a, and that is also one of my favourite books. And inclusion, I mean, it's a part of my work day in and day out, trying to create more inclusive systems for children and for racially minoritized practitioners and leaders. But really, as a leader, you being able to create change and environments that are inclusive for diverse people that you need on that journey. In particular, growth mindset stands out for me. It can be really challenging to stay positive, to stay optimistic, especially as a Black leader. But if you're going to influence and you're going to try and inspire change, that ability to think big, to think, to be forward thinking and to really just be positive and open to change and development is essential. And confident is therefore something that helps with that. Being confident, you know, if you've got to change, if you've got to reflect, if you sometimes have to apologize, that is all part of the journey. And for me, that confidence to do all of that is inherent in leadership. And underpinning all of this is an ability to communicate your vision, to communicate your goals, and essentially, you know, key messages for those that you're leading. And now when I think about Black leadership, for me, it's all of those things that I just outlined, in addition to trying to really affect change, the pursuit of justice, the pursuit of equity and equality, the relentless, for many of us, activism towards, you know, really challenging goals and visions and ambitions. And so these images really, for me, epitomise Black leadership. And these are kind of modern day examples. There are so many people that have come before me as well that, for me, are Black leadership. People like Nanny of the Maroons, you know, the Nelson Mandelas, you know, the global leaders that we all know, Bob Marley, another example, Black leadership, you know, people that are pursuing freedom, that are pursuing change, that primarily benefits Black communities, Black people, Black generations to come. And for me, that is what distinguishes Black leadership from the traits that I just outlined when I started off talking about leadership. It's all of those things directed towards a primary benefit for Black people in different areas of life. So in terms of my own leadership journey, and again, I mean, thanks Wayne for the invite. I found this really challenging because you don't often think about all of this, you know, theoretical stuff in terms of your own life. So for me, my leadership journey really is rooted in my life experiences. My Black leadership journey is born out of a place of joy, lots of Black joy, lots of amazing and incredible role models like my grandmothers, like my mother, you know, lots of people in my family and from different parts of my life, like one of my first youth workers, Lennox Carty, a dub poet, who is just, yeah, such a key part of my journey and my beliefs and my values. So lots of life experiences that are joyful, and in contrast also lots of life experiences that are painful. that are characterized by discrimination, oppression, racism, sexism, ableism. I'm a neurodivergent Black leader. It's a different journey when you're also a neurodivergent person. So my life experiences have ignited my fire and continue to ignite my fire as a Black leader. And then along the way, I've done education and training. So, I've got a master's in youth and community work. So I'm actually a youth and community worker by trade. I also have a postgrad qualification in management, where I covered management and leadership, and as all of us do, lots of continuous professional development. So I've had lots of formal and informal training on topics that are related to leadership or explicitly focused on leadership. And then I've had lots of roles where I started off as a volunteer in my teens on play schemes for children with disabilities, and as I've progressed through my life, I've held positions where I've had management responsibilities, but also been a leader, whether formally or informally. And I think this is really key when I think about Black leadership. It's not just actually something related to your pay grade because you've got the job title of director or head of service. That's great and maybe gives you formal authority, but it doesn't necessarily give you some of those traits that I listed at the beginning as a leader. It doesn't necessarily give you the ability to lead, to influence, to inspire, to communicate. I'm sure we've all got examples of people who are paid a lot of money and are so-called leaders, but they cannot communicate, especially with the Black staff in their services. So I've had lots of professional experiences where I've been able to develop skills, and I've been able to somehow master an art of being able to influence, and especially influence other Black colleagues and organisations. And I think that's at the heart of my journey, my pathway to where I am now. And so finally on the screen, this point about self-improvement and development, that is at the heart of my Black leadership journey and will always be. Learning about myself, learning about other people, understanding how I can really improve who I am and my leadership, understanding other people's different experiences of Blackness, and the intersecting identities within Blackness, and what I need to do to be able to lead and to be effective for that diversity, and that is in the Black community, the Black workforce. How do I embody Black leadership? These pictures are some of the ways that I think I do, but obviously the proof is in the pudding, so I guess it's for other people who work with me to confirm this. But I would say on the top left, Black excellence. I really aim high. I really aspire to be excellent in all that I do, and I've had lots of people along the way role model that to me as Black leaders. In fact, Sharon is on the call, Sharon Davidson. I worked with Sharon in a previous role in children's social care, another example of Black excellence. So yeah, Sharon, not to put you on the spot, but one of the people, who've role modelled this to me, whatever you're trying to do, and no matter what you're faced with, people trying to make potentially your life harder, always aiming high and being excellent in what you do. So other people, when you're trying to get them to buy into your vision and to walk alongside you, are delivering excellence. And unfortunately, as a Black leader, it's a double-edged sword. We don't have the privilege of being mediocre quite often. Our mediocrity renders us stuck in the positions that are well below our potential and our capabilities, but also they are never forgotten. They're a repeating reminder from people. So trying to be excellent and role model excellence and be unforgiving of mediocrity. And I know that is a manifestation of racism and white supremacy, but for me and my Black leadership, I think that's quite important. The picture of the peer, having a vision. For KIJIJI, it's about a community for Black professionals working to safeguard children across different sectors, where there's safety, where there's learning and development, where there's representation, and trying to inspire people to connect with the community, but also feel able to thrive in their careers as a result of what the community offers them, or just what it ignites in them from a distance. Think about things differently. So for me as a Black leader, I think differently anyway because I'm neurodivergent, or perhaps I think actually normally, and it's everybody else that thinks differently. For me, the better way of framing it. But ultimately, Black leadership for me is about being open to different ways of doing things. We are not always right. We are all socialized in a particular way. We only know what we know. So that openness to other ways of being, other ways of achieving goals, and to be led and inspired as well as to lead and inspire. That baseball picture below is about that coaching and supporting people to develop those skills and to achieve goals and to support my goals as well. This ends with us, that top picture. This is about racism. For me, embodying Black leadership is about being unapologetic. I speak about racism. I'm on this thing, as some of my little cousins would say, in terms of I only work in trying to dismantle these systems and these structures. That's what my company is established to do. I try as much as I can to connect with people who are, able to support what we're trying to achieve, but for me also to be supportive. Black leadership is about role modeling that support, that community, that networking, trying to put aside the competition, the defensiveness, the crabs in a bucket mentality. We need to end racism. That's my goal. That's what I'm about. So if I can help a sister, if I can help a brother, if I can connect people, send opportunities, whatever it takes, by any means necessary, this ends with us. What can I do as a Black leader to dismantle these systems, these structures, to create a better future for my son? So let's go get it. Let's go get this success. We can succeed. We are succeeding. And finally, that book pile is to represent the ongoing learning and development. As a Black leader, I'm always trying to read. I'm always trying to do new courses. If it may be too long since I've done a course, I start getting itchy. Like I'll have a thirst and a hunger for learning. The world is changing, and so racism, it's adaptive. It changes all the time. So I need to ensure that as much as possible, I am developing myself, my knowledge, my understanding. So as I start to kind of head to the end of my section, future aspirations. I found this one really hard. It was a question about what are my future leadership aspirations? And so I thought I would do a slide that is a tribute to one of my favourite leaders, Audre Lorde. You might be familiar with her, Black American activist. She's known as she was also gay, and she just is incredible. If you're not familiar with her work, I would really, recommend it. So you can see the quotes on the screen, and I'll give you a moment to have a read. I'll just draw your attention to one of these pictures in particular to summarise, which is the bottom left, where Audrey's saying basically that once you step out of what people are expecting you to be, you're condemned to silences in Black literary circles that are as total and as destructive as any imposed by racism. So my future leadership aspiration is really to be that leader that welcomes the diversity of Blackness, that celebrates, that enables, that uses that diversity to still affect and influence change, and to also be myself as a Black leader, one that stands outside of these boxes, these constructs imposed upon us. I'm a Black woman, a neurodivergent woman, and that already means that I'm quite different to how people expect me to be. And so for me as a Black leader, my future aspiration is to really celebrate the totality or the diversity within Blackness, within Black leadership, and to use and harness all of that to dismantle these systems and these structures that are not for us. So what are we doing to support Black leadership? As I've already mentioned, KIJIJI is a community to champion the equitable growth of Black safeguarding professionals across sectors. And by Black, we're not referring to political Black. We're talking about people essentially who are of African Caribbean heritage, who are racialized as Black. And we exist because we recognize that there are disparities in the opportunities available to us and the outcomes that we achieve. And so we try to address that through those three things on the screen. Ultimately, our mission is to champion the empowerment and advancement of Black safeguarding professionals through networking, education, support and opportunities. And within all of that, that is fostering and developing Black leadership. Specific things that we do research. You might have read a report we published on opportunities and support for Black safeguarding professionals. We have a monthly safe space, which is a place where we come to talk about topics related to our work, and we have speakers also at those events. We've run previously a leadership program for aspiring Black leaders, and we're due to run another one this year, and that was available for free for 50 leaders, and it featured prominent senior and Black leaders across the safeguarding space. We also have networking events. We've got an in-person one in June in London for those of you that might be interested in joining. And we also do learning and development. So we've run various different training courses for organisations, and we also disseminate, for example, via our social media, latest reports and insights to help the community learn and develop. And we have a WhatsApp group. So we have a community of Black safeguarding children professionals who have access to each other to ask for help, but also there's always things being dropped in there, opportunities, links, reports, and all of this is helping people to develop their leadership and to be able to thrive in whatever way they want to, and whatever way Black leadership is kind of conceptualized for them. We also made specific recommendations in our report that will promote Black leadership, as listed on the screen. Leadership opportunities that are senior officer sponsored and ring fenced, high quality learning and development opportunities, and investment in learning opportunities focused on 3 topics that came up in our report: mental health, culturally competent and trauma-informed practice. And we'll actually be rolling out a free e-learning course in partnership with Vanessa Boachi at Inside Out on racial trauma later on this year. And aside from our research, 3 additional things that we think can be done to promote Black leadership. So safe spaces and community like this, and also other Black spaces that exist, and just more of them basically. Celebrating and sharing of success stories. There are incredible Black leaders in, different walks of life, but especially in social work and other connected sectors. So just really celebrating and sharing what they're doing. Leadership isn't just about you being a DCS or a senior role. Leadership happens in the community. Leadership happens in our families. And so really just recognising the strength, the resilience, the influence and the impact of Black leadership in all different spheres of life, and amplifying that. And finally, pay and reward, promoting Black leadership. If we are going to think about the workplace, must include paying and rewarding people accordingly. There's a long-standing ethnicity pay gap, and we also see disproportionate levels of complaints and fitness to practice reviews for Black staff in safeguarding, and all of this impacts our earning capacity and what we're taking home. So promote Black leadership by paying them more and rewarding them for their efforts and what they're having to endure in these systems on a daily basis. So these 3 pictures, I was asked what's my interpretation and what do they mean. And on the left is a quote and the meaning of Black leadership. And really, this is speaking to KIJIJI for me, is what we try to do, empowering fellow Black safeguarding professionals. It really resonates with the mission and what Ade and I are trying to do, and others like Wayne, Shantel is here, trying to do through various community and organising. The picture of the ladder, I guess the question is the presumption that the person is trying to reach that level above them, or is it actually that Black person is holding up everybody else? Because what we know, especially from BSP space, is quite often Black people, but also Black women in particular, are holding up a whole lot, and it's not recognised. They're incredible Black leaders, and it takes its toll on them. So for me, this picture really resonated. Sometimes people might assume it's a glass ceiling that she's trying to break through. I'm assuming it's a she actually. But ultimately for me, it actually is she holding up everything else that's going on, which in my experience is quite often the case. And finally, Black excellence, just want to round up on that. And what resonates is what we see every day in our work at KIJIJI. Excellence in all different shapes and forms, in different roles across the country. So yeah, it is what we're about, and it just resonates because we see it everywhere. So thank you for having me, Wayne. That is my presentation.
Thanks so much, Laurelle. I'm sort of still absorbing a lot of what you said, really. I feel so energized from that in terms of like black leadership, your definitions of it. Yeah, I'm still sort of processing a lot of what you said because it resonates so much and confirms a lot of what I already think, but also has expanded some of that, I think, as well. So thank you. And it's always a delight and a pleasure to hear you speak. I wrote a few things whilst you were presenting about your presentation, and I've written analytical, honest, and incisive. For me, that sums up your definitions and your perspectives on black leadership. I'm grateful for the props as well, sister, so thank you. I can't believe I would ever be put in the sort of company that you had me with on the slide with Akala and Benjamin Zephaniah, and I can only really hope to do a fraction of the kind of work that they do. But as long as we're all pulling in the same direction, as you were saying, and trying to, kind of support black and racialized communities, marginalized communities, I think that's our mission, really. So, I applaud you and everything that you do. Everything that you said about black excellence, for me, that being aspirational and a kind of ongoing journey as opposed to a destination against all the odds. I salute you as a cultured and worldly black leader. So thank you again for your presentation. Hello.
Sorry, I am here.
No, it's fine.
Where's you gone?
We're just having a break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're coming just at the right time. You were synchronized there. Yeah, just the right time. So what I'm going to suggest, right, is Laurel's just having a quick break. People are gathering their thoughts and their questions and comments about Laurel's presentation. I don't know how much of it you were able to see, but I have emailed it. So if you want to have a quick skim,
I saw most of it, but I know what.
Yeah, of course, we know Laurel, don't we? We know the score.
Have a look. Yeah, that was amazing though, and I like your wrap up as well.
Thanks.
I just had real. I said real, raw, authentic, hot. You know what? There was just so much.
Yeah, soulful.
It just made. Yeah, it just made
keep that energy. And let's have that.
When we're coming back, what, 5 minutes?
We're staying on the call, but I'll come back. It's 22 now. I make it. I'll come back at say 5 minutes.
Perfect. Remember, I'll jump up at 11. Yeah, so please let me get.
And Beverly's coming at 11 as well.
Oh, so, is she?
Yes, yeah. And she'll be. We'll be having a discussion rather than a presentation from Beverly, though. So if you want to ask a question first and do it that way, if you can hang around. But
yeah, let me try.
Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, no worries. Be back in a second.
No
worries, bro. Take care, darling. Bye.
Okay, everybody. If we can come back, please. So what a presentation, eh? Really good. I've said my bit, so I'm going to keep out of the discussion and really let the group get into a discussion. I'll try and keep my mouth closed. So thanks again for your presentation. Absolutely just beaming with joy, really, to hear that, and energised, as I said. So I'd like to come to Pauline first, who is chair of the BPS, who's got a question for you.
Thanks, Wayne, and thank you so much, Laurelle. I don't know if it's a question, it's just kind of continuing on from, really being grateful, and I really appreciate the presentation that you've delivered, because much of what you said has really encouraged me as a black woman working in a local authority, and kind of feeling that I'm just working and not really being recognized. A question that came to me was, how do you said you didn't really think you were a leader. Wayne thanked you because you included him on your slides. And I began thinking, well, how do you know you're a leader? And I thought, well, I answered that question myself. Others have to tell you. And, in this room today, I thought I'm amongst several leaders here. Wayne, Sharon, Shantel, Seymour, all of us, I think. And I'm not going to include myself because I have to hear that from someone else. What also struck me is your honesty, as others have said, and that you claim your whole self. You mentioned your neurodivergence. That is part of you, and that's your whole self. You said it unashamedly several times, and that really cheered me. Because I'm thinking there are lots of questions I've got to ask you, Laurelle, but I think I have to ask you outside of this meeting, because how did you know? How did you get that diagnosis? What did it mean to you? Was it a positive for you? Obviously. But for others, how did you claim that? That struck home for me, because there are things going on for me that I'm questioning. How do you encourage someone like myself to connect with my other leaders via social media? That is one of my barriers. But, lots of questions that I've got to ask you, as I can see a younger person than me, so age comes into it. And I could go on and on, but thank you so much, Laurel. You've made my morning.
Thank you, Pauline. Oh, such nice comments there. Yeah. And if we could come to Shantel next, please.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful comments. Your comments. I want to come to you as well, Pauline, because I want to respond to you. I do. But just say to
And I
Laurelle,
just want to, sorry, if I could just interject.
Yeah.
Pauline, you lead from the front, by the way.
I was going to say, you don't need nobody to.
You
don't need nobody to give you permission to tell yourself you're a leader, Pauline. You are definitely a leader, and that's what I wanted to say to you. You need to walk in that authority. You need to own that and not wait for people to for people to give you that. That's what I wanted to say to you.
Thank you.
But yeah, I love you, Pauline. But Laurelle, my sister Laurelle, that made me sit up. I have been unwell all week and fighting with technology to get on to hear you. But powerful. Absolutely amazing, and as has been said, you speak with realness, rawness, authenticity. It warmed my heart just to hear. I know your journey. We speak, and I know I love what you do and what you represent. But just to be in this space, just to be amongst such excellence, and just to hear your vision, just to hear your path, it's just encouraging. And I think a point that I wanted to pick up on is about how we all support each other, because as well as us wanting to inspire, we also need to be inspired. We can't pour from an empty glass. We need to make sure we're surrounding ourselves with like-minded people as well. So mine was much more of a thank you, and thank you, Wayne, as well for putting this event on. But yeah, just to really that I really absorbed everything you said. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, always on point, Shantel. Thank you. And Sharon, please.
Well, I want to be Laurel when I grow up. So thank you, Laurel. Thank you for acknowledging me. I appreciate that, and the points that others have said I share wholeheartedly, because I've known you for a long time. What I really appreciate is that positivity, because it's really hard to maintain positivity in some of the encounters that we experience on a day-to-day level. And I think it's those encounters that sometimes stops us thinking about ourselves as leaders and thinking about how we can inspire others without necessarily having a job title. And I think that is a really powerful message, and that whole the idea of Black excellence being something that is not about roles and authority. It's about actually what we do and how we do that, and the image that the last one of the slides you had where the person is holding, really thinking about that was really a powerful bit, because lots of times we talk about breaking the glass ceiling, and one of my inspired leaders, a woman called Dame Lorna Ball Kelly, in a previous role that I had when I was chairing the network for principal social workers, talked about people keeping the ceiling, not just breaking the ceiling, but who's there to hold you up and who's there to support you when you are trying to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve, and support others in their professional development. But actually the statement of holding the ceiling up, and I started to think about when we worked together and some of the things that I encountered at that point. I wouldn't have been thinking about it in that way, and I think that was really that's really resonated with me. But I really appreciated your presentation today, so thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you, Sharon. And Adi, next, please.
Thank you so much, Laurel, for a very challenging, in the sense that challenge our worldviews. Your presentation, which was very short, very sweet, very impactful. There are many aspects one could talk about, but in the interest of time, I just want to talk about a couple of things and just to pick your brain. So the first one is this notion, which I haven't read a little bit more about, but I want to. And it comes through your presentation there about Black people. It's about the Black nation wherever we are, and that this is a nation that's scattered and divided. I believe leaders should bring this nation together. And I can see that's coming through your work, through the WhatsApp group that I recently joined, and people coming together, making comments, sharing opinions about many things. I just wanted to pick your brain on whether you think just a focus on relationships, just building relationships beyond talking about positions and pay scales, just investing in those communities is something that could be part of Black leadership. And then just connected to that, secondly, there was this notion that people talk about really, that people of European origin are very united, connected in their differences. So there is something about their values, about racial solidarity. And then many people have been saying that similar racial solidarity lacks among Black people wherever they are. Is pursuing such could be such an objective for Black leaders? Is it really a noble objective, and how can that be achieved?
Okay, thank you. The question I picked up is essentially whether we can achieve a unity similar to what people say exists for European communities and ethnic groups. And I guess I would even challenge that, because if we look through history, and even now, I often wonder, is this a form of othering? Because some of the fragments of the Black community, I guess my challenge would be, I do see them existing in other communities, and maybe I may feel it more acutely and see it more clearly because I'm part of Black communities, and it really negatively impacts me personally. But that being said, I have friends who are, for example, white European, Polish. My Polish friend, they've had some really awful experiences from other white people, white British people, especially in this community, real xenophobic, awful prejudice. So I don't know if there is that much of a difference in terms of some of this division that we might see in Black communities versus others. I think that key ideologies like capitalism, for example, naturally lend themselves to division and oppression of people who are marginalised and minoritized. And whether you are part of a Black racial group or ethnic group or white racial group or ethnic group, when you are minoritized and marginalised, I think you are on the receiving end, essentially, of a lot of that, the negative impact of a lot of that division. That would be my take on it.
Thank you, Laurelle. And thank you for that question, Ade. We have Seymour, please.
Great presentation, Laurelle. There's a lot for me to take back from it. One of the sections that's a pathway to becoming a leader, and it's just going to focus on one area, what top tips would be to make that transition to becoming a leader. I'm talking specifically towards like a social care or social work pathway. It might be to do with AYSCs or social workers who might watch this and think, well, actually, as a Black worker, how am I going to, I've just started the first paths of my career. How am I going to make this step to get to some sort of leadership or realize some leadership potential that I might feel that I have?
If you don't mind, I'm just going to bring in a point that Pauline made earlier as well. I think for me, it links back to the slide where I said, for example, about that constant learning. So taking opportunities to develop your knowledge and understanding, not just in terms of your professional skills, so obvious things that might come up in your workforce development offer, but also transferable skills and things that you can look to do outside of your job. So might be a trustee position, maybe non-executive director, a school governor, things that give you an opportunity to develop leadership skills in a different context that might be really useful and not necessarily obviously connected to your roles. What I would suggest is something specific. But also, just on Pauline's point, if you are essentially wondering if you are neurodivergent, I would say go and check it out. That would be my number one bit of advice for a neurodivergent leader, because you might need support. It's not that you are incapable in any way, that there's a deficit that hinders your leadership ability, but you might actually be able to access support, for example, via the Access to Work government scheme, where you can get funding for things like tools like noise cancelling headphones or software that transcribes meetings for you. You might be able to get funding for admin support. These are things that make it a lot easier for you on your leadership journey, but especially if you are quite a senior leader. I'd also say a diagnosis is quite helpful if that is something that might be useful on your radar, because you might then be able to get other reasonable adjustments from your employer. Some of the things that might be asked of you right now might be really difficult and leading to burnout or overwhelm because actually you're neurodivergent. So for example, someone like myself, it can be really stressful if things aren't organised in a particular way, or I find it quite difficult to navigate environments and read certain cues when it comes to people and communication. So at least then, if your employer is aware of that, it might mitigate some of the labels that you might get, like rude or disengaged or whatever. Actually, you're neurodivergent, so the way that you read the social environment is totally different. So one bit of advice is just about professional development, thinking outside of your job and the workforce development offer. And the second bit of advice is specifically for anybody that is neurodivergent or has got an inkling or questions. And Pauline, happy to chat with you separately. So yeah, that's from me.
Thank you, Laurelle. Thank you for that very comprehensive response. Sharon, I can see you've got your hand up, so we'll have a quick question from you, and then I need to introduce our next guest speaker.
It's more a kind of thinking about the question that you raised, Seymour. And I guess in terms of, and I can speak in terms of my own journey, that I think one of the key things is that we need to be true to ourselves. And that whatever your value base is, that you hold that value base and you're unapologetic about that, so that can help you continue to be confident and positive, and some of the points that Laurelle highlighted for us. And I think the challenge sometimes for us as we're moving into senior roles is that we're being asked to be squeezed into somebody else's expectation. And we're then fighting against ourselves. And so it's that bit about holding true to ourselves and maintaining that. And so that means that if I present things in a way that doesn't talk to a white voice, what I'm saying is still valuable. And I think that that's something we should really be supportive of each other around as well. I just wanted to add that to the mix.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think some of it's about definitions of black leadership. Obviously, we've had Laurel's, and a lot of us subscribe to that definition, but also definitions of success as well. And you know, the kind of achievements and progress that we make on that journey, and recognizing those. So thank you, and thanks everybody for that discussion. To Laurelle again for your presentation. I'm really pleased to have with us Beverley Tarka. Hi, Beverly. Beverly is from the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, ADASS, and also a Director of Adult Health and Communities at Haringey. So we're really happy for you to join us, Beverly.
Morning, Wayne.
Yes, thanks for joining us. And we've just had a really incisive and analytical presentation from Laurelle, a very honest presentation about black leadership. So we're really kind of inspired and enthused to hear your views about black leadership as well. We talked about having an interview rather than a presentation from yourself, because we've got a nice sized group here. I'm sure we can have a really nice interactive discussion. If I could just ask members of the BPS to introduce themselves, starting with you, please, Pauline.
Hi there. Hi, Beverly. I'm Pauline Sargent. I'm the chair of the BPS and I'm a consultant social worker in one of the London boroughs.
Good morning, Beverly. Really glad to meet you. I'm Shantel Thomas. I am many things, but basically qualified social worker. I am also the head of social work at the Tavistock and also lead their social work master's program. Also a PhD student. I'm looking at Black women in leadership. So your name has come up on my radar. So I'm really pleased to have you here today. And also founded a small CIC. Yes, I'm registered it as a CIC, anti-racist movement, looking at Black women and our healing journey and how we support each other, as well as, tackling, breaking these glass ceilings. And, everything Laurelle was talking about, she knows I'm just nodding and smiling because that's what we're about. So it's all about lifting each other up as we climb as well. So thank you, for coming. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
I'm really pleased to meet you. I have very fond memories of the Tavistock, having been there for a couple of years, some years back. But yeah, beautiful. Maybe we can catch up in the future going forward.
I hope so, Beverly. Thank you.
Okay, that's nice. And next, if we could have Sharon, please.
Hi, Beverly. I'm Sharon Davidson. Currently, I'm a sort of improvement consultant part of the week in Partners in Practice team in Islington, and freelance trainer and consultant the other part of the week, and doing some work with the DFE around the career framework for social workers as well. I was formerly the co-chair of the Children's Principal Social Work Network, and you came to our, you did a presentation at the end of my tenure and introducing the next tenure, and really looking forward to kind of having some more conversations with you, particularly thinking about the journey for Black leaders and what keeps us strong to keep doing the job. So really looking forward to some conversations today.
Okay, yeah. If we could have Adi next, please.
Hi, my name is Adi. I'm a principal lecturer at the London Metropolitan University, so we're North London. So I belong to the area of social work, communities and youth work. So at the London Metropolitan University, we have schools, and within schools, we have subject areas. And so our subject area is social work, youth, and communities. So it's leadership in communities and youth work. So I'm principal lecturer there. I deputize the head of subject. So just taken up some leadership roles there. And so this presentation was quite useful to me.
Thank you, Ade. And Seymour, please.
My name's Seymour. I'm a qualified social worker and also a practice assessor, but I work primarily as assistant team manager, and I work with care leavers. So I'm more a front line. So I work supervising practitioners who provide services and work for care leavers, and it's basically that's an area that a specialty and an area that I sort of passionate about, and because it's an area where you see a lot of change in terms of young people who have been in care, and you see the growth and how they turn out. It always amazes me. Basically, that's where I work at the moment for a local authority in London.
Thank you, Seymour. Thank you. And our other guest speaker today, Beverly, is Laurelle, who I'll just let reintroduce herself briefly before we come to yourself. All right.
Great, thanks. It's a real pleasure to meet you, Beverly, because have seen you obviously on social media and stuff and been like, yeah, it's great to see just representation. So nice to see you in person. So I am a independent scrutineer for London Borough Safeguarding Children Partnership. I'm also co-founder and director of a community for Black safeguarding children professionals called KIJIJI, and my main job is I'm a director of a consultancy that works with organisations that safeguard and promote the welfare of children around EDI change and transformation. So we do training, consultancy, change programs to essentially lead to better outcomes across the workforce and children's outcomes. So great to see you.
Great to meet everyone. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for bearing with us during those introductions, Beverly. And like I said, we're all really kind of enthused to hear what you've got to say, Beverly, because as Laurelle was saying, it's good to have representation, but also somebody of substance, who talks the talk, you know what I mean, who kind of talks the things. We need somebody who is able to, speak for us in those forums where Otherwise, we just wouldn't have a voice, and our needs, our perspectives wouldn't ever be considered. So, like I say, it's really good to have you. So, yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about your definitions of Black leadership, then I'm sure we'll be all really keen to hear that.
Thanks very much. As I said, a pleasure to be here. So I see it very much as a conversation, and thanks for introducing the interview format. Because although I do a lot of presentations, what I don't like so much is not the ability. Sometimes you're just asked to present on the stage and then, step away. I really like the interactive part and that ability to engage. So in terms of what Black leadership means to me, I think it's leadership from a Black perspective of my Black experience. I'm going to personalize it in terms of my response because I think it can mean different things to different people. And I'm quite a reflector, so I like to think about what, the impact my experience and my sort of upbringing has had and has shaped me as a leader. And hopefully we'll go on to explore some of that. For me, it starts with a real awareness of myself, and that doesn't just come, it grows, and it's a journey, really. And you have support systems along the way, but very much I think that opportunity for reflection is really important in terms of how I see Black leadership. And just to say, I don't think it's a static thing for me. It's very dynamic. It changes. You learn from experience. You talk to others. You talk to allies. And that actually impacts and strengthens, I think, my ability to lead from a Black perspective. So there is just something that when I think about my own Black leadership, I like to think about some of the characteristics that I believe I bring to the role I play in a series of domains. And there's something for me around being courageous. That's the first word that comes to mind when I think about my own experience and my own role as a Black leader. As a Black leader, I think one has to be able to manage quite difficult situations and conversations. And it takes courage to be able to do that in a way which means that your credibility still stands, if I can put it that way. So there's a level of confidence, encouraging actual candid conversations and respecting difference. Not all Black leaders think alike. And I love being in a space where I hear from diversity within Black leaders. And then we work together and come to outcomes that I think is enhanced because we've had that dialogue. But there is just something, just relating it a little bit more to the workplace in terms of my leadership. I feel I've been fortunate to have had a career in Haringey that spanned over 30 years in the field of social care. It's an extremely diverse, as I'm sure you all know, and vibrant communities within Haringey. And I live as well as work in Haringey, and I feel really comfortable there. And I suppose I contrast that with my journey as a young child, being part of the Windrush generation over to England from the Caribbean, and seeing at close hand what my parents experienced and the challenges back in the 60s of the cold, hostile environment and the importance there of education. I mean, my father worked on London Transport. As you're aware, people came here to build Britain after the war and were, not well received, if I'm being polite. So there was just something around that family upbringing and some of the learning and some of the strategies, actually, that I think I bring to my experience as a Black leader. So there's a certain degree of resilience that I recognize in myself that is really important. There's something about the trauma, and it's not a word I use lightly, of coming to a new country and experiencing everything that brings with you and how you develop strategies to cope. And I think this is an area we often don't talk about enough. But certainly it was, and I referenced my experience at the Tavistock, it was certainly when I spent 2 years there under Agnes Bright, I don't know if you know her, Shantel, I was able to explore in group sessions, and I found that extremely cathartic. And I think really that has really contributed to my understanding of self. So Black leadership starts with a real understanding of yourself, a real understanding of your history, what that experience brings to the situations you find yourselves in your current roles, There's an understanding of, obviously, anti-racist practice and the expectations that are placed on you as a Black leader within organizations to play that leadership role in terms of combating racist practices. Hopefully I'll go on to say a little bit more of that later. But I think fundamentally it is understanding that it's not a very comfortable place to sit, and one has to have significant support systems in place. I like to use the word allies, both in professional and personal, in my personal life, to actually enable me to, I think, fulfill my role as a Black leader, but hopefully bring that experience of my history and my perspective in terms of how it can influence and lead an organization, I think is really important in terms of how I view my own experience of Black leadership. Hopefully I can expand on some more of those points as we go on, Wayne.
Thank you, Beverly. Yeah, illuminating and so interesting to hear some of the different and similar perspectives around Black leadership this morning. There's some definite themes and patterns that I'm sure the viewers and listeners and people who are here will be picking up on. And one of the other things that's come through, I guess, is that diversity within as well as between cultures. You know, obviously the Black diaspora is so kind of diverse in of itself, and then all the other kind of ethnicities and races that exist also. You know, there's some, you know, it's so complex, isn't it? But thank you for sharing your views. I'm sure there's people who want to ask questions, so I'm not going to hog the limelight. I'm going to come to Shantel. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Wayne, and thank you, Beverly. You know, to hear, you know, part of your story, and you know, I know we've all got our journey. We've all had a story, and it's important that we do speak about that more. I say, I really think it's important to share that experience and that expertise. My grandparents were part of the Windrush era, so you know that made me smile. Well, when I say smile in terms of the pride, I know it wasn't an easy time, but if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here, stood here, you know, to do the work that I do. But I wanted to touch on what you said around understanding self, and you know, and the kind of work we do at the trust in terms of that internal thinking and working. Agnes actually left the Tavistock when I started. I've only been around a few years, but I've heard of her. Her legacy, you know, is a massive one. And, you know, there's some other Black colleagues who are in the trust at the moment that speak really highly. But yeah, what I was going to touch on is just, you know, what you said about the importance of understanding who you are, the importance of understanding those emotions, particularly in organisations where sometimes things are projected onto you, and how you deal with that. And I think to survive in leadership, to survive in this world, it's really important that you kind of tune into that. But then also to how you look after yourself. You know, self-care is a massive thing for me as well. So in order to frame it in a question, you know, how do you, what things do you do in order to protect oneself? Because as we said, you know, you don't represent all of us, but I was really proud, you know, to see a Black woman up in your position, and it just made me believe again, you know, that 16-year-old, you know, it just gave me that warmth, that belief. And yeah, you know, but how do you maintain that? What do you do?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, and I would, if I'm very honest, I would say probably not very well, because I think as a woman, as a Black leader, and culturally, I think there are expectations, you know, from a Caribbean background. My mother's 90; she's still doing well.
Wow!
So I've got caring responsibilities, and there is just something around the flexibility and the agility to be able to manage that work-life balance. And if I think probably of the most important support system for me is it has been a very close friend, also from Barbados actually, who I actually went to school with in Haringey, and I still continue, you know, to have very, very close conversations that you can just offload and say anything to. I find that so important in terms of my own resilience. She's in the private sector, and it's really good sometimes for us to just compare and contrast our different environments. But having that sort of solid support system. But more generally about sort of women and Black leadership, I think And also as a black leader, I think one mustn't fall into the trap of working hard without working smart.
There you go.
And sometimes you just feel you have to visibly demonstrate that you're working hard. And sometimes I do fall into that trap. But then, you know, I'll have a bit of a stock take, and I'll sort of think, this isn't very smart. You've got to have some more balance in your life. So I think being black does sort of let me speak personally, predispose me to thinking I've really got to prove myself. And therefore I've really got to, you know, go to the nth degree, etc., etc. But gradually, I think, and this comes with time and experience, you come to the realization, actually, your own definition.
You're enough.
Exactly, you've said it. Your own.
You are enough.
It's enough without having to prove yourself. But it has been, not less so now, a constant struggle. But self-care, I absolutely agree, is really important. And it's important as a woman, caring responsibilities, etc., to have support systems. And I find my friend as that sort of shoulder that walks alongside me, let's put it that way.
Thank you. No, thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you.
We've got some invigorating vibes, haven't we?
I'm telling you, I'm just...
All right, that's nice to hear. So if we could come to Sharon next, please.
Yes, thank you, Beverly. Something that you said really sort of resonated with me was also that bit about having courageous conversations. And what it made me think about was also managing expectations, and those expectations both from other black staff, but also kind of managing it within a context. So from my own experience in terms of a particular role I had as a senior manager, was about managing and supporting the pathway, if you like, of black staff and trying to be a good role model, but also kind of managing what I experienced, and I don't know if that you've experienced, is a bit of a deficit model. So that there's, so in conversations where my own managers or other senior leaders would want to inquire about work, and that there was that assumption that I was in the negative as opposed to an inquiring approach, and how that plays itself out and the impact of that. But equally, kind of, I agree with you that your own support systems have to be there. So I guess my question or my reflection with you would be about how you're managing those expectations when they are, sometimes those expectations are people who are really proud to see you in a leadership role and want to support you, but you can't always meet their demands or their needs. But also, from white colleagues and white staff who maybe are not always as respectful to the role that they might have been, in terms of you as a black leader, and just some insights, really.
Yeah, really useful question. I think there's a few things there, really. So just how do I manage? So I'm a firm believer in distributed leadership, and I'm known for that in terms of how I work and how I manage my leadership position. So there is just something about being very clear about my management style and being clear about my expectations of not just my direct reports, but throughout the organization, right down to the front line. And I think once you're able to do that and people see you're actually serious about distributing that power, I don't hesitate to use the word, I think people look at you in a different light. And it means that there's a culture of not blaming when things go wrong, because I make mistakes, everybody will make mistakes. There's very much an emphasis on learning. And I think that's how I've been able to build my credibility over the years, and that's helped me in my role. Having said that, obviously there have been challenges along the way. I've had grievances taken out against me, accusing me of being anti-racist. It happens. But I think fundamentally what that, and you've got to remember in Haringey, really diverse population, people get to a certain level and then go no further. It's similar, Haringey is no different. But I think the way to sort of combat that is to be very open and transparent about and try to take people with you. And I've had occasions when I've had to do disciplinaries or, make some very clear decisions. But fundamentally, at the core of my decision making is a set of standards and values that I feel I'm able to be quite open and explain to everyone. So because I'm a Black woman in leadership, don't expect me to be different when something's been transversed that I know is wrong. Yeah, and I think just having those clear standards has helped me. And it's not been an easy road in all cases, but I've been able to be true to myself. I've been able to have the support system. I have a mentor. I've had a mentor ever since I've become a senior leader. Someone who's been here, done it, worn the T-shirt, and is able to actually just give you that guidance. And I think that's incredibly valuable. I think allyship is also really important when you're a leader, a Black leader. I actually sort of chair the council's equalities, diversity, inclusions sort of staff network groups. And one of the things I really emphasize is the impact and the value, added value of intersectionality and the focus on how we can be supportive and how allyship is so important. What I call Black minoritized staff group is called Embrace. It's a really positive framing. Everybody becomes racially and culturally aware. And I think that's such a positive framing and it's really inviting and welcoming of the whole workforce. And I find that extremely supportive in terms of policies. We very much integrate them in terms of, co-production is often bandied about, but actually I think we're certainly on the journey in Haringey to really enabling our staff through our staff network groups to engage in our policy development and formulations, particularly to do with discrimination, anti-racist practice, etc. So that's a vehicle that I think has really been important for me to establish. And it's almost a foundation to enable me to fulfill my role. I'm not sure if that answers all your questions. But
no, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Sharon. We have Pauline next.
Hi. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you for talking about your own, situation in terms of how you manage your work-life balance. You talked a lot about your background, and I think I wanted to ask about age and gender and how that impacts on you, as a woman in a leadership position. I think we all know, will your experiences be different to that of a Black male your age? And, just looking at myself, I'm a social worker now for 20 odd years, and I've had a peer, working alongside a really good peer along the way who now is my manager. And I've had to work through some difficulties with the shifting changes in the sand. So you've spoken about allyship and the importance of that, but I'm kind of thinking outside the box and wanting to hear your reflections on trust. Yeah. And that element of trust, and how important do you recognize that, and how, if so, how important is it to you? Because I know for myself that comes up all the time, and I have to be true to myself. If I don't trust, I cannot then claim a person as an ally. So that's very important, and that's very much work in progress for us here in Haringey, I have to say. And you get a sense of it from when you do the staff census and how many people are actually open to revealing personal information about ourselves. I think it's about a third return in Haringey, and that certainly isn't good enough. So one of our strategies, and luckily I've got an ally in the chief exec. He really encourages those gritty conversations. He's agreed to co-chair the steering group with me. And what we've been able to put on over the last couple of years, series of really open sessions, inviting all staff from across the organisation, actually reviewing the values of the organisation. We came up with some new one, exploring what allyship means to everyone. So it's really that inclusive approach
and trying to bring people with us rather than this sort of top-down, this is what should happen. And we have a goal to enable people to bring their authentic selves to work. That's our vision in terms of equalities in Haringey. And we've still got a very long way to go. And we know that we have to demonstrate in order to build trust that we're serious about this. So, for example, very quickly, because I'm conscious we've got a series of questions to get through, I'm probably still on the first one. What I did was to do some work with the University of Bristol around equalities, diversity and inclusion. They came in and did focus groups with the organisation, and there was learning from that. We did a census, and there was learning from that. The important thing was action. What those surveys and academia research did was show us we've got a long road to travel. More importantly for me was how do we demonstrate that we're actually taking action, and it wasn't just a tick box, we've done this and we put that. That's the only way we can develop trust within the organisation. So there's very much active monitoring. Our senior leadership team, we have external facilitation to support embedding the objectives of that action plan throughout the organisation. And you'll all be familiar with all the kinds of recruitment practices, etc., that are really good practices that we have to put in place. But for me, action is the operative word. We have to take action when we get the information and we're not happy with that information. And that's the only way we can demonstrate and build trust within the organisation and involve, be as inclusive as possible.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank
Wayne,
you,
we're probably
Beverly.
straying off your questions.
No. I'm just making a few notes there in the true geek that I am, actually, around some of the things that you were saying. What I noted down was about your ambitions, your action and accountability at Haringey. Obviously, not disputing that there's a long way still to go, as you say, but it sounds like the real crux of what you were saying was really about the scale of your ambitions, things that you're putting into action, and then, accountability and then the evaluation around that. So, it sounds to me that that's the direction of travel, really, that's going to really bring about the change that we want. And it's where organisations are in terms of their motivation, to undertake that journey. So thank you. Yeah, I got a lot from that. And if we could come to Ade next.
Thank you so much. Just a little bit of a background. I was inspired by Wayne Reid and team when I joined BPS, and I agreed in the bar I worked before I joined the uni, London Metropolitan Uni, where I work now. I was in the London Borough, and so I agreed to provide some training in anti-racism. I had sessions throughout the year, and they were actually compulsory until they were stopped abruptly. And they have not been reinstated. The plans have changed. But the interactions with participants left me very frightened. I'm not a coward, right? But I was so afraid that anything could happen to me in that borough as I do my work. And I felt like a lot of scrutiny in my work as a social worker then. There was a lot of scrutiny that increased after some senior managers had attended those sessions. Black people, who fall in the black category, really liked that space, really enjoyed, rated it high. The other groups weren't happy. So I was so afraid. How do you deal with that? Have you ever been afraid as a black leader? And how did you perceive the cost to you as a person? And do you think the cost of being a leader and being able to speak up is personal, and is the barrier to black people taking these positions and speaking up?
Yeah, a really, really good question. I don't think I've been afraid. I've been anxious, and that's just the just the way I am. I think when I go into new situations, or I talked about courageous conversations, of course I'm anxious when these things surface. But I think the culture of the organisation is really important when, I'm attempting to respond to your question. So I'm going to contrast, because you're probably aware, as well as working with Haringey, I'm also president of ADASS for this year. It's coming to an end at the end of the month. But I just want to sort of contrast my feelings in terms of, introducing a focus or an increased focus. I wouldn't say I was the first one to talk about it within those organisations. I would say in terms of ADASS, which in terms of certainly if you look at its national team, is a largely white organisation. I had more anxiety in terms of introducing those conversations there. So how did I deal with it? I made a point right at the beginning of my presidency, because with ADASS, there's always a focus on what your priorities are going to be. And I said, I made a point, and certainly in my own inaugural speech, about talking about how we work is important to me as what we do. So the actual priorities are important, but actually how we go about it is equally as important to me. And that meant that at the start, instead of having the usual President's Day, we had a team away day where I was able to explore some of the issues around equalities, diversity and inclusion, and how I wanted to embrace it and make it a focal point of my leadership within my presidential year. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that wasn't a focus within ADASS at the, previously, but I made it explicit that I wanted it embedded in everything that we do. I didn't want it as an add-on. And I was very anxious about starting that conversation because at the time I was the only, because there's a board of trustees and usually you do some sort of conversations and work with the board of trustees, and I was very anxious about that. But actually, I think we were able to do it. I had, and this is where allies really come into play. I had really important allies that we were on the same page as me, and therefore we had that sort of coalition or impetus to actually make things happen. So that was the experience there. Just to your point, I wasn't afraid, but I was anxious. I think in Haringey, less so. We're not where we should be, but so for example, I'm a black DASS. The DCS is also black. We've got significant numbers of people at assistant directors that are left. It felt a more comfortable place. Anyone that tells you that actually that visible presence, black leadership is not important, is not being serious in terms of that ability to change things. So it felt like a more comfortable space. And also the CEO of the organization, I think very values-based, very values-driven. And I think if you don't have that, you're going to have a challenge. And that's perhaps where some of that fear, for want of a better word, Adi, may have come from. But certainly, I use those two examples to contrast how I've personally felt. But I felt extremely supportive within Haringey in terms of my work with EDI.
Oh, thank you both. Such honesty and transparency in what you were saying there, Beverly. And I think I speak for all of us when I said that you really come across as an authentic leader. A quick question that I have that I'd like to just shoehorn in is, in terms of the progression that you've had then, and like you said, there's not many black faces at the kind of stage where you are, the kind of status that you have. What would you say to people who say that you've sold out then, or people like us, or black leaders, within the establishment, that we've kind of sold out in some way, or kind of, taken from the poisonous tree, or whatever analogy people want to use?
If I've understood the question, I mean, I work in the public sector, but I think it probably is quite, generic across all our organisation. One important strategy to me is always to be on the inside rather than on the outside. Particularly with social care. And, we deal with a lot of government officials. Again, I'm going to draw on examples from my ADASS experience because I think it's relevant. You have some of the organisation that actually, so bitter about government, there's not enough funding and they're always fighting and all of that. And when I went and in my presidential year, I just really had to knock that on the head. That's not the way I can work or I can thrive as a leader. I'd rather be in the inside, understanding what's going on the inside, building relationships, and trying to make things happen on the inside. I hope that kind of answers your question about selling out.
It does, most definitely.
Does it?
And I didn't mean that, I suppose, in a curveball kind of fashion, but just that I know that it's something that is levelled at, black people who excel in whatever way, that there is this kind of fear sometimes that they're seen, or, of having sold out, or this perception of having sold out. And I just wonder how that might apply to you. And so thank you.
Well, that you know, I mean, if people think that I'm in bed with you know, government officials, that's up to them. But I know that by cultivating the right relationships, I feel we have, as an organisation, a better chance of making things happen that we want to happen, rather than being outside the tent and being left out. It's just a simple philosophy that I have.
Yeah, and it applies across the board, I think, doesn't it? In terms of obviously employment and work and the work that we undertake, but also from a Black perspective and in terms of racial unity and so on. So thank you ever so much. And Seymour, you've been waiting patiently there. Let me come to you next.
Beverly, I just had a question for you that kind of followed on from what Adi was saying before, and but it's sort of slightly moving forward in the sense of, you know, you've been in a local authority for a long time, so you would have, as all of us who've worked in local authority know, that change is inevitable, and is going to happen. Whether that's you know, restructuring, policy changes, new management systems, whatever it might be, financial changes that affect the service delivery, all those sort of things. And I suppose my question was, as a Black leader, how have you managed that and survived it? Because those sort of changes, they can be tough. Because a lot of tough decisions have to be made. It may be that ex-service might have to lose some staff, or this service we need more staff here, or that kind of thing, which created a lot of conflict. You as a leader might be asked to lead on this part of the restructuring. You know, I'm just saying from experience, my experience, sometimes you're asked to lead on things, and it may be that you think you're leading, but somebody else is kind of pulling the strings or manipulating the situation so that you're not actually, you think you're leading, but you're not actually leading. And then when you've led something, you put in the proposal, and somebody's already put in another proposal which you weren't aware of, and that's already been agreed, and it's going, we're going in that direction, not the direction that you were supposed to be leading on. So it you know, I know from local authorities it can be like that. So how do you kind of manage that?
So I could probably do it very briefly in one word, but I will expand. Resilience. And if I'd had the opportunity to give you a little potted history of my career, maybe this is the opportunity now. 30 years in Haringey, but actually my starting point was my upbringing, and some of the people I've learned from and valued. It sticks in my mind my maternal grandmother, who was a plantation supervisor, and she was blind in later years. But when we used to go back to Barbados after coming here as a child, she used to regale me of stories about her experience as a plantation supervisor. And I suppose I recognized some characteristics in her that I believe I have in myself. And there was just something around resilience and how she was able to build and hold that position. And as a plantation supervisor, you would understand some of the challenges and the conflicts within that role, actually overseeing a group of other sort of slaves, as it were, in working for white masters, etc., etc. So some of those insights, I think, have stayed with me and built my resilience. And if I can then come forward to Haringey, to the cuts and some of the challenges. I was managing day services at the time. It was a period of austerity. I think it was 2010. And I had to close day centres. And I have a brother. I live in the borough. My family lives in the borough. I have a brother with profound and multiple learning disabilities. And I had cultivated a really excellent relationship with carers. And then I was there fronting this really difficult message around having to close day centres. So you can kind of imagine the dilemma that I was going through and how to navigate that very personal, where the personal sort of interfaces with the professional. And just to sum up, I think there was just a couple of things that got me through that, as well as the sort of resilience. And I still bear the scars, and in some quiet moments of reflection, that the sort of the emotions still come back. But I think there is just something around taking the positives. I would say I'm very good at framing and thinking through things, so I'm able to put across both the pros and cons of a particular situation, and not just focus on the negatives. And that is so important for me in leadership. And it's not about hiding, but it's been quite open and trying to present that balanced front. And I think that has enabled me to have a certain credibility that enabled me to see myself through some of those difficult challenges where you have funding cuts, and yet you have to go on a particular path. I think there is just something around that inner resilience, the strategies you have of being quite open, transparent, and balancing your messages and being clear about what's within your control and what is not. I'm not in control of government policy. My role is to, enact it, but to enact it in a way that actually I'm being open, transparent. I let people know when there is a choice and be clear when there isn't. So in that circumstances, we were able to get to a position where we're able to keep some day services open, and we were able to, I don't know if you remember valuing people, anybody on the line, go back to the whole ethos of valuing people and focus on ordinary lives for people with learning disabilities. And I think that's what got me through. Thanks.
Thank you, Beverly. Yeah, there's some real serious wisdom there in terms of Black leadership that for all of us, something we can all take from what you've shared in that discussion.
That last point just spoke to my spirit. So thank you so much, because as a consultant, I feel that pressure all the time when it's EDI stuff, the recommendations, and I know I'm Black and people might be expecting things. So thank you so much for that point. My question is, you mentioned earlier about mentors, and I just wondered if you had any practical takeaways, because I can find this quite challenging because I'm always aware that people are quite busy, and I don't know, maybe it's a self-imposed assumption of not wanting to burden people, or I just wondered if you had any advice around seeking out mentors, approaching. I imagine people might ask you all the time.
No, that's fine. So both organisations, we have a really, in fact, particularly ADASS, a really strong mentorship program and also training and development program, which was before my presidential year, which recognised the underrepresentation of Black senior DASSs and really look to develop programs that could support that. So the mentoring program is one of those, and then there are some moving up and other developmental programs that really focuses on minority ethnic groups. Back in Haringey, I've had a mentor for many years. I also have mentees, so I mentor as well. I find it a very reciprocal relationship because I learn as much from the person I mentor as hopefully they get from me. So it's something I absolutely encourage. Being very open and to learning and really cultivating that relationship of trust is invaluable to any leadership, whether you're Black, white. So I would absolutely advocate that. Absolutely imperative. I wouldn't be able to do the role that I do without having a mentor.
Thank you, Beverly. And I would echo that as well, for what it's worth in terms of mentorship. I think people have met one of my mentors, Andy Thompson from the Triple H and WAG. I still sort of rely on Andy as a mentor, and I know that other people in this group have theirs as well. So that's really something I think we'd all want to echo to any viewers and listeners. Shantel, I can see you've got your hand up.
I do, and I'm just going to come in again about the mentors and how important they are. And it also speaks to kind of what Seymour's question was earlier as well about newly qualified, so anybody trying to move or think about leadership, one of the best ways or, a strategy for people to kind of use to help think about their journeys, but as well as mentors, coaches, I think there's, they have slightly different roles, but I think a coach is also somebody who can, who doesn't really tell you what to do, or maybe hasn't even walked your path, but can help you think about what's going on. And picking up Laurelle's point about being neurodivergent, I'm also neurodivergent. I don't often talk about it, and Laurelle has encouraged me to speak about it a bit more. But in terms of having lots of ideas, having maybe not thinking like everybody else, or as she put it, not everybody else not thinking and behaving like you. And how coaching can help you to frame a lot of your ideas and, plan and strategize about what to do next. And, I know I wouldn't be sat here without my coach, without my mentor, but also therapy. I think therapy is really, really important, and we don't talk about that enough. We touched on trauma, we touched on our experiences and how, we think they're buried, but a particular situation could just spark, and these feelings can be raised and we don't know where they come from. And what therapy does is helps you to identify that and make those connections, but also to make those emotions not drive you, but you're much more in control of those. So yeah, I'm a firm believer, and again in the community, particularly, well, in my family, I talk about my family, it wasn't something that we were encouraged to do. You know, therapy, don't tell people your business, and it's all of that stuff. And I am totally, I'm of a different mindset now. Love my ancestors, love my elders, but it's a different mindset. So it is about encouraging that. So yeah, that's what I would want to kind of put out there as well. So yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Shantel. Yes, thank you. And just as you were speaking there, I was thinking, future events, really, future projects, Black neurodiversity,
honestly,
Black coaching, Black therapy.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's all
we
sorts
all
of
need to get
avenues.
involved in. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. Okay, I'd like to just wrap up the session by just sharing my screen briefly. Out of these three images, Beverly, which one would you say resonates with you the most?
It would have to be the ladder, the ladder and the glass ceiling one. I felt that it kind of represents where we are at present. If we look at Black leadership holistically, and the underrepresentation, and the need to have to almost crash through the glass to get up there. So we're still very much on that journey. So that had the most resonance for me. I felt this interpretation of Black leadership, it felt very disruptive, but I aligned it to my thinking about being courageous. I took that negative, for me, disturbing the peace connotation into something more positive, because that's what I like to do. So for me, that's really about being courageous as opposed to a disturbance or a disruption.
Okay.
And defining Black excellence is what we're all about. For me, is not what we're all about, because it almost feels as if you've got to continuously prove yourself. And I liked it when Shantel said, being you is just enough. And, that's something I hope if we can all imbibe and take away, that confidence in ourselves as we are, not feeling that we always have to demonstrate excellence, it is a more sort of manageable place to be, and certainly what speaks to me. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you for sharing your views and interpretations and your perspectives this morning on Black leadership. Thank you also to Laurel for your analytical and comprehensive presentation around Black leadership. And it's just, like I was saying earlier, been so rich in terms of some of the themes and areas of consensus and agreement that we have as a group, but also some of the differences. And I think we have to be realistic and to accept some of those and, acknowledge those, learn from them, or even reinforce positions that we've already got maybe around some of that. But it's just been so fruitful. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to all of our BPS members as well. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm sure you'll agree that was a mesmerising synergy session. Thank you to Laurelle Brown and to Beverley Tarka and to members of the BPS for their contributions in that session. And I'd like to list a few examples of strong Black leaders who I've come across in my professional and personal life. The first being Akala, intellectual, MC, author and academic. Dawn Butler, who is a politician for the Labour Party. KRS-One, who is an intellectual, MC, author, philosopher. Robert Cottrell, who was the first team manager that I had at the National Probation Service, and he's a local Black community leader where I live. Rennie Edo-Lodge, who is a Black author. Shantel Thomas, who is an ex-colleague who I've worked very closely alongside and seen lots of examples of her strong activism leading from the front in terms of Black leadership. And Malcolm X, Black civil rights leader. Those people have all positively influenced my personal and professional development over the years, and I'd recommend exploring some of their work if you're not already familiar with them. As always, thank you for watching and for your support. All the best. Goodbye.